to have to use the slides. We can just talk, I think, if you want us to. So, yeah, I think that's probably easier if we just talk through it. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Using the slides, or
We're just going to be
I've
ad
not
hoc,
looked at
aren't we?
anything.
So just kick off. We've got
I mean, I haven't looked at the slides, but yes. So we.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'll just
Shivani and I we did go through it a little bit.
Oh,
yeah.
great. In that
Yeah,
case,
yeah,
you're
yeah.
more prepared than I am.
So I'll do just like sharing duties and half an hour, 40 minutes. Okay. 41 for 45, you don't give us 45. 41 for 30, and you say 45. It's okay, I'm okay with it.
You ready?
Literally,
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. We're going to make this a quite interactive panel session, and we're really looking at infrastructure, but what I wanted to do was start by giving everybody on the panel here the opportunity to introduce themselves. So if I can hand over to Shivani.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. I'm Shivani and I head up the international team at Brunel University of London, and it's lovely to be here in Chennai. Just to understand our room a little better, how many of us in the room are students currently studying? Excellent, lovely, brilliant. And I guess on the other side we probably have any academic staff in the room teaching at universities? Okay, we've got one person at least, and of course we've got Patrick and three, and then I think rest probably are professional services staff at universities. See lots of familiar faces. Okay, thank you. Sorry, I was just scoping the room. Sandy.
Brilliant, thank you. Welcome everybody. I'm going to attempt to be your chair for the session. My name's Sandy Bangal and I am actually working as an independent consultant, but I've worked in the field of higher education for 25 years, working both with universities and corporate recruiters looking to engage with students to be on their graduate programs. So, shall we...
Just as a quick introduction, I was trying to be polite. So I thought I shouldn't introduce myself first. It would be more polite to be ladies first. My name is Tony Lee. I have the rather lofty title of being the Chief Visionary Officer, and I've worked in around international student mobility for the last 2 decades. Most of that time has been spent on what many people would refer to as international student recruitment. But certainly since the pandemic, I've been working with an organisation called IGES, and we really look at a lot of data around student mobility and also facilitation and infrastructure around ethical student mobility. Thank you.
Excellent. So just to kind of position the session and some context, after having quite an engaging conversation yesterday where Shivani was on a panel with some institutions, we wanted to focus this session on student mobility. As we've got mostly students in the room, we're going to kind of steer it more towards the kind of things and information that you would need to have to hand before making that very important decision about study abroad. So I'm going to invite Tony and Shivani. So Tony from the ISEF point of view in terms of the agents that help you in that journey, but also working with the institutions, and Shivani from an institutional perspective. What changes have you seen in, I would say, the past year or so in terms of what's really informing the choices that students are making? And I guess, Tony, from your point of view, are you seeing change that agents are reporting in terms of destinations? But what I guess is really informing those choices?
I think there's always going to be several things that are moving the market, and generally what's happened is that more and more young people are looking to study overseas. So we've seen huge growth. In the time that I've been working in this industry, we've seen a 4-fold increase in the number of people that are seeking to study overseas. So on the backdrop of that increasing demand, you've also seen a huge growth in increasing choice. There are more and more institutions that are putting forward their internationalization strategy, and there's more and more options for young people that want to study overseas. And more institutions in most markets are looking to attract and retain international students. There's a second backdrop to that, which is we're also seeing the rise of right-wing politics and a geopolitical shift that we're all, I'm sure, very aware of. And that is driving really questionable choices in terms of policy in markets, where on one side you've got a fantastic sector with people driving soft power and people visiting the country and people hosting those visitors to the country. On the other side of it, we're all aware of the news that's happening in America, and you've got ICE agents running around. And I'm talking from personal opinion now, but I wouldn't personally want to send my daughter to study in America right now because I'd be very worried about her all the time. And I think that is a backdrop that's changing choices for everybody. And then on top of that, we've also got a cost of living crisis. We've got inflationary pressures. Everything's becoming more expensive all the time. And I think for a lot of people, that means that, well, you'd have to be quite brave, I think, to want to go and study in America at the moment, certainly in certain parts of it. You'd also have to be quite rich because it's quite expensive. And so I think those are the underlying driving forces that are changing people's choices. They're looking at, where can I afford, and where will I be welcome? And I think those are perfectly natural human choices. Where can I afford to be, and where will I feel safe and welcome when I go to study?
I know you, before we move on, and he's not just saying that because he's British, but can you just maybe expand on that and just share with us some of the, because I know our ICEF run agent insights each year. Any kind of pointers from that for the students that are looking to go on that journey in terms of trends or patterns?
Yeah, so we have for many years run a thing called Agent Voice, and what we do is we survey the agencies around the world who are talking to the counsellors around the world, and we have in our midst we have around about 40,000 professionals across the world that are helping students on this journey, and around 6,000 of those have been accredited by ICEF. So there's quite deep levels of data and understanding in terms of what trends we're seeing. And what we're seeing is the agencies themselves are looking at a much broader breadth of destinations. So historically, they would specialize in the US and the UK, and like maybe branch out to a little bit of Australia and New Zealand and Canada. But now we're seeing the move beyond the big four. And now it's at least 14 study destinations that people are looking at. And there's more choice, and we're seeing that with the growth of T&E as well, which I think is quite pertinent to what's happening here today. And that means that people have growing choices, and that those choices quite often could be study overseas but still study within the region, or they could be even multi-campus destinations where people are doing a different semester in different places. But I think we're seeing more and more choice being delivered, and that is against, as I say, a backdrop where there are factors beyond our control that are driving a demand for those choices.
Yeah, no, thanks, Tony. I think a lot of that probably resonates with what we do in our industry. But I just want to see a show of hands. Lots of students in the room. How many of you are considering to study for your master's or your PhD out of India, overseas, anywhere overseas? Okay, one so far? Two? Come on, boys, don't be shy. We're not going to put you on a plane right now. and definitely not to the US. Are you all doing your undergraduate degree? Yeah? Some are doing postgraduate. Okay, and is it primarily around engineering or? Commerce. Okay, great. It's interesting that out of so many of you that are currently studying in Chennai, are you all originally from Chennai? So all of you? No. Okay, show of hands of how many of you are from Chennai? 70-ish%, and the rest of you are from South India? North India? So what part of India have you come from that are not from the south? Okay, now I'm trying to make it more interactive for you guys, because maybe you haven't thought about studying abroad yet. And if you haven't thought about studying abroad yet, is the main reason in your mind thinking it's too expensive? Yes? Yes? Okay. We'll try and sort of clarify and try and, you know, bust that myth. Yes, it will be more expensive than what you study in India, but remember, very soon the world will be a glocal place. Lots of commerce students here. Can anyone tell me what glocal is? Glocal. I promise I'm not an academic. Global, that's why the glow, and local, that's why the cal. So glocal. You may imagine today that studying overseas may be very expensive, out of reach for you, but I'd highly encourage looking at that option, not because I'm from the industry, but I have been a product of studying overseas. And one thing I did learn was our learning in India is fantastic, especially at undergraduate level, because I think we have some of the best universities, colleges, wide range of subjects that are offered in India. But at postgraduate level, we all can imagine there are limitations. If you've done your commerce right now, and what if you want to switch to artificial intelligence? How many universities in India will offer you that option? But when you look at, no, right? When you look at coming, let's say to the UK as an example, that option is available. So try and think a little beyond the classroom that you are in right now. And what Sandy said was, what trends are we seeing? So I think the one trend I have seen in the last 1 year, like a lot of you who never thought we will leave our hometown, our small village, our city as big as Chennai, are now looking at options beyond their reach. And that is being made possible because of a lot of people in this room who are in the education sector, but equally there's lots of opportunity available in a varied range of subjects. So some trends I've seen is, you know, typically maybe 10 years back when I would come to Chennai, the only course boys would ask me for, and since there are lots of boy students in this room, was automobile engineering, you know, aerospace engineering. Those are the two programs. And I would rarely see any girls doing engineering. I certainly have seen that change in the last 10 years. And I think a lot of students now want to do programs or subjects that are a bit out of the box. So you become more employable. And or you look at a program that helps you become an entrepreneur in the future. In the last year, I think certainly from a UK perspective, I've seen students tend to choose programs around AI, around data science. And one of the reasons they choose that, especially from India, is the lack of availability for those programs in India at the moment. That will change probably in the next 5 years or so. You know, what did we hear? Chen AI, you know, Chen AI coming out of Chennai. And the second thing I've seen is a lot of students are tending to choose universities that are budget friendly. Personally, I think it's not a bad idea. You have to look at, you know, your budget, you have to look at your finances. But what I would recommend is that there are lots of good scholarships, whether government funded or locally funded by universities, that are available for Indian students to apply for. And Indian students are very welcome in the UK. But equally, some of the brightest minds that we get doing research in the UK are also from Indian origin. So I think have pride in the subject you are studying, but think a little beyond the current classroom that you are in, where the reach would, I feel, would be slightly limited to what's available within your city, within your state, within your country. But I'll stop there, and then, you know, we can kind of, I'll pass back to Sandy just to see.
Yeah, I think just thinking about changes that I've seen over recent years, and for me, another big change that I think has shifted has been the way that people perceive rankings of universities. In terms of, I remember, you know, if I'd been in this room maybe 5 years ago, everybody seemed to be quite fixated, obsessed about the only thing that matters is getting into the highest ranked institution that I possibly can, and that was the goal. The goal was acceptance at a high-ranked institution. And that now seems to have moved on, and that trend has moved towards, I want to ensure that I get a good outcome, and that I want to make sure that I am very successful in my studies. And I think now it's very much looking at return on investment, whereas if I went back a few years, I didn't used to meet hardly any parents or students that even talked about return on investment. It was all more about a badge of honor of being accepted into a high-ranked institution, and that trend does seem to have been quite seismic. And I think that trend has also followed, I think, there being a different mix of cohort. I think it was, you know, largely, particularly when we saw the largest percentage, particularly in the UK, of students hailing from China. It was quite a rankings-obsessed market, and that trend seems to have changed.
But I mean,
it's interesting because that situation, and I think the young students can probably comment on this, but there's two problems in India. Most of the time, the parents tell the children what they have to study. Like I remember when I was in school finishing standard 10, there was a massive pressure on me to take maths, and I hate maths. I just don't like it. But my dad forced me to take math. What did I do? Purposefully fail the 11th standard. I'm not a bad student, guys, but that was the only option. That was the only way out. And the second thing is, even in India, there's a massive pressure, not just from the family, but from the society, that everyone has to study at an IIT, or everyone has to study at an IIM, and then the Indian School of Business, and then that's how it carries on. But I think what's changing now, especially in the state that we are in, that there's some brilliant engineering colleges, there's some brilliant business schools, fantastic medical colleges, but that overall pressure, I think, still sits in India, but maybe it's getting a little better. And hopefully it will get a little better in the future.
Thank you. I also want to say, whilst Shivani is here representing Brunel, there are other colleagues from other British universities here, so feel free to talk to them as well in terms of their offering. You touched on our ROI, which was also something I wanted to speak about. And by the way, in terms of rankings, you do need to take them with a big pinch of salt. But the Chinese, yes, you're right, they're obsessed, because I met with somebody in regards to some work a few weeks ago. And as well as asking me my name, the second question was, which university did you go to, Sandy? And do you have a master's? Which I did. So why? And I think I know the answer, but in terms of return on investment, it's increasingly asked of many students. What do you think in your kind of respective organisations, what's driving this? I most certainly have seen now students that would typically, international students that would typically graduate, go and travel. I've seen a big change in them actually graduating, not wanting to go and travel, and some not even wanting to take or make use of the graduate route, but just go and get a job. What do you think is driving those choices? Tony, do you want to start?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I think it's what we deem the idea of success, isn't it? I think we're seeing greater participation in higher education more broadly, but I think that's starting to be questioned. I think, you know, when you look in the UK as a market, for instance, you know, domestic recruitment is being driven by that question somewhat, isn't it? You know, there used to be attending university used to be quite an elite thing. It was, you know, that some people that could afford to go, and they would look to study classic subjects at high-ranked institutions. But it's now much more of a utility. It's much more a path towards your career. And I think we're also seeing people quite genuinely worried about the number of graduate jobs that are going to be eaten alive by AI and what that means in terms of coming out of university. I mean, we see it in, to go back to China, you know, you see people that have spent a lot of money, they've gone to study overseas, they've come back, and then people see them working, packing shelves in their local supermarket and wonder what the effort was for, you know, because they could have gone and done that without traveling to the UK and spending a whole bunch of money. So people want to know that this is going to lead to a career, and I think the return on investment question is a good one, and it means that it changes, I believe, the role that the institution plays in guiding that student, because I think people want to know how I'm going to get a job at the end of this.
Shivani, do degrees lead to careers?
Oh, I've got too much. Yes, I think I am a believer in education. I think education is a gift that keeps giving. I think a lot of us would have heard that. I think having grown up in India, I certainly do value that education just doesn't change or start your career, drive your career, but also drives the person you are today, the integrity you have, the honesty you have, the soft skills that you have. And I think one thing I find quite fascinating is that you take the Indian student out of the classroom and their confidence level is something else. And I mean, you know, I sit here today and I can speak in front of you, but probably when I was in school, I don't know how talkative I was. So I think it really helps you get out of that comfort zone. I do want to ask sort of some of the students in the room, have you guys done any internships, placements in between your studies or after your studies? Yes, no? Show of hands that have. Yeah? And who helped you find that placement or internship? Was it your university? Was it you yourself? Yourselves. Okay. And in your mind, whatever money you're spending to do your undergraduate degree, I know it's not going to be as expensive as studying in the UK or anywhere abroad. Is there a constant pressure on you guys to find your first job, get your first salary paycheck, and pay back your parents for the fees that they've spent for you, or you guys are a bit relaxed that, you know, it's not too expensive, I want to finish studying and then I'll figure life out? How planned, how much of that sort of stress, not the stress, but how much of that planning you guys have done in your mind? Have you done any planning?
We have done several planning, but don't know how to
Okay. How
access.
to access them.
And okay, that's a good start. Do you how many of you in the room want to do a typical corporate job versus how many want to be entrepreneurs? Corporate job? No one wants to do a corporate job?
Wow.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the rest of you want to become entrepreneurs. You want to do your own business. Yeah? Pretty good. That's pretty cool. Again, I think this is good food for thought for you to think, how will you achieve that entrepreneurial sort of journey? Do you have a business plan in mind? Do you have certain product work in mind? Do you know what types of businesses are trending in the Western world that you would like to bring to India? So there's a lot of, I think there's a lot of unsaid reality, again, which is outside of where you are sitting today. So, you know, reading up about new subjects, getting to know about what's happening in the world. Not everyone can be an Elon Musk, and that shouldn't be your goal either. Come on, I mean, you know, it's a bit too predictable. But equally, you never know. I mean, you know, you never know. You may be better than Elon Musk in the future. I think to take a step back and value sort of the a degree to career is it's a lifelong journey. And you know, you may feel like, I think when I was in class 7, I thought I want to be a doctor, because I was very inspired by the pediatrician that I would go to, and I was like, oh, this is the best thing in the world. Come to, you know, standard 10, I was like, oh God, I'll have to study for 10 years. No, thank you very much. And I chose the easy route to do commerce and even left maths. So I think there's a lot of choices that change, but at the end of the day, the whole learning cycle will keep evolving, you know, depending on what industry you are in, what subject you guys are in. So I think, yes, education leads to career, but it doesn't stop at that. I think it can keep carrying on depending on what you want to make of your future.
So can I ask you, how is Brunel attempting to demonstrate ROI to international students currently, or what's in the pipeline?
ROI is a very interesting word. So when you look at studying overseas, the first instinct we have as an international student is we multiply the sterling pound to an Indian rupee. It's very high at the moment, guys. I mean, 1 pound is 126 rupees, right? Very expensive. It's very difficult to quantify this. I'm going to be very honest. If anyone in the world, including University of East London, who is doing some brilliant work around employability, and so are we at Brunel and a bunch of others in the room, I don't think there's a formula to this. Yeah. What I will recommend is stop converting. Second, please do not think everything is a magic pill, that you've gone to study at the best university in the world today, and tomorrow you'll graduate, and then day after you'll get a job, and that will give you a salary package of 1 crore rupees, equivalent to, let's say, 100,000 pounds. You'll pay off your loan and everything will happen at the drop of a second. It's not. You have to be patient. Good things take time. The ROI model, I think, is complex, but what we do at Brunel definitely is give enough opportunity to our students to do placements in the UK, but equally look at options of working with employers in India, especially in the growing economies that we are. A lot of everything's digital. You don't have to be physically present in China to deliver a business that is, you know, primarily operate in China, and same is for India. In Chennai, and I was out here in November, and we met, I think, about 30 offer holders that were coming to Brunel to study in January, and out of the 30, 25 of them already had business plans. I sense a strong entrepreneurial spirit in this city, and some of them actually knew exactly what they wanted to do, so I didn't have to answer the ROI question. But if I did, I think you have to give, once you finish your master's, if you're coming for the master's, you have to give yourself 5 to 7 years. bare minimum. That is what it's going to take when when you're able to start paying back. It can happen quicker for some, and it can take longer. But I think the average period is about 5 years for, again, an average Indian student coming to the UK to study and investing round about £30,000 or about 30 lakh rupees. I'm giving you a very broad figure, but I'll give you context that it's not quick. So don't do the conversion, because that kind of screws up with your head, because you kind of convert and you're like, oh, it's going to be very quick.
Thank you, and that's why I wanted you to give a candid view and reality, really. Yeah. Many of you that will start your journey to study abroad will maybe come across agents. Have you used agents? Do you know about recruitment agents that universities use? No, some? Yes? No? Okay. Well, so I wanted to turn to Tony just to understand a bit more about the profile of the agents that ISEF work with, that would work with the universities that you might apply to overseas and you might engage with in your respective regions.
Yeah, I want to give a little bit of context to the agents and what they do. And so I'm a father of a daughter, and I'm helping her select her university at this moment in time. And I'm very mindful of the fact that it's a huge decision to make. I may buy many cars in my life, and that's a big purchase for me. I may buy several houses. That's a big purchase for me. And if I'm going to buy a house, I'm going to speak to an estate agent, and then I'm going to go and get a mortgage. And when I get a mortgage is an important thing. I'm going to live with this thing for many years. I get professional advice, and I want professional advice when making such a big life-changing decision. And that, for many years, has been the role that agents and counsellors have played, is you're making a very big decision, one that's very difficult to reverse. If you're going to study overseas, you do not want to move to another country away from your parents, get on campus and then say, it was the wrong choice. So both parents and young people quite often employ the services of an agent in order to make that life-changing decision. And I think that's a perfectly good thing to happen. I think what's important is that those agents help you make those decisions for the right reasons, with the right ethics, with the right levels of transparency, so that they have a vested interest in ensuring that you are going to the right place for the right reasons, that you're matched with a good institution that's a good fit for you. And most agents absolutely work that way, because if you do go to a country and you're unhappy, your parents are going to be unhappy with that agent. You're going to be unhappy. If you had younger siblings and cousins, they're not going to go to use the services of that agent. So, to the most part, for a long time, I think the agent marketplace has been, to a degree, self-regulating by the very nature of consumer choice. So, did that answer your question? I'm not sure that it did.
Yes, it does. I was just also interested in when I asked about profile, are those agents that are registering for accreditation?
Yeah. So I should explain that. So ISEF, many of you in this room will not be aware of, we have for 30 years, we have facilitated the relationships between the agents and the universities, the institutions around the world. Not just universities, language schools, summer schools. We put those two together for ease of understanding. We're like a dating agency. We basically match those two people together, and we bring the agents, let's say from this region, we will bring those agents with us to America, we'll bring them to Canada, we'll bring them to New Zealand, to Australia, to the UK, to meet those institutions. And then equally, we bring those institutions to the market so they can meet the agents there. So if you imagine, we do that around 20 times a year. And we've been doing that for 30 years. Every year we facilitate tens of thousands of those interactions and relationships. And it's important that if we're doing that dating agency, and I apologize for this analogy, but it means that we need to make sure the people coming on that dating agency are fit for purpose. Nobody wants to be matched to a psychopath when they come to the dating agency. So we vet and check that the people that are coming to that are the right people to meet. And it's now, as we've moved into the latest era, that has almost become a service in itself. For want of a better analogy, the weeding out of psychopaths is something that we offer to the rest of the industry.
Thank you. Shivani, anything to add in terms of your experiences at Brunel?
Yeah, I think just for context, because a lot of people in the room may not understand what the word an agent is. I'll be slightly simplified than a dating model. How many of you have ever used a travel agent? to book flights, hotels, rail tickets. Everything's done online, right? Oh, okay. 1, 2. So if I take you back 20 years, which obviously is very hard because you're very young, we all used to use travel agents, and it was not because we didn't know where to go or how to book, but the access was less accessible. I think education agents, it's not the same consumer behavior, because buying a flight ticket versus investing thousands of 100 lakhs of rupees in your education is very different. But the principal model is customer support. So you're in Chennai, you don't know what's happening in New Zealand, for example, but you may have an aspiration to study in New Zealand. You will have local reps or local agents that are experts, either by the virtue of experience or by the virtue of having studied in that country themselves, who can then tell you a little bit more about what to expect when you get to New Zealand. So I feel like it gives you a slight reality check. What subject, what country, what budget, what's the life like there, what kind of jobs would you get there? If you do intend to stay in the country forever, what are the opportunities for permanent residency? If there are no, it's not an option. Safety, because your parents, for all your parents, you prize possessions. So there's a lot of things that your agents can help you with. Chennai has some fantastic counselors. It also has the British Council. If you all haven't been to the British Council yet, please do go to the British Council. I think that's a great stepping point into getting to know a little bit more about the UK education. You've got some amazing school counselors here, or people who've been counseling young people like you to understand what the study abroad market is. But the role of the agent shouldn't be taken lightly, and it's not on both sides. There's a lot of honesty and ethics involved in that, but equally, if you don't know, if you've got a random question, these agents can also help you contact the university directly. Some of you may want to apply for your PhD to University of Oxford, right? If you email University of Oxford, it may take weeks for them to come back to you. But there could be an agent who can facilitate that conversation. So try and look at the agent or the counselor as your friend, as your mentor, as your guide, and ask them questions, because they'll be able to give you that validated, genuine advice. And obviously, for the university colleagues in the room or the agents in the room, the feedback is these are big life decisions someone's taking. So there's a lot of responsibility that we hold as university or colleagues in the education sector. So I think don't be scared of the word agent. There are lots of people around here who can help you. So I think the purpose probably by the end of this would be that you feel a little more comfortable about thinking of studying abroad. It's not a scary thing. It's not impossible. It's not out of reach, but you need to get that right information from the right agents, even on scholarships, which your agents will have access to. But I don't know if Tony wanted to add anything.
No, the only thing I wanted to add is we spent the last couple of years accrediting agents, which means that we do vetting checks on them, and we've made that public facing. So when you go into an agent's office now, they'll have a QR code. You can check that QR code. It means that we've sanity checked that agency. So if you were going to if you were going to go to an agent, I would ask you to ensure that they are accredited agencies that have the right references, and therefore they are indeed trained. You'll also notice the British Council have done some work. British Council certify the counsellors, and that again means that the person giving you that counselling has done some training and is qualified to give you that guidance and advice. And with that, I'd say thank you very much for your time today.
Okay, I had one more question. Really briefly, I wanted to really hear your comments on a small kind of shift I've most certainly witnessed. Most of the students that come to the UK come for postgrad study, and there is a slight shift beginning to undergrad. And I'm wondering, Shivani, from your point of view, and any other colleagues that represent UK universities in the audience, what do you think is has made that shift to UG as opposed to PG that I've most certainly picked up on? Or is this my imagination?
No, it's not your imagination. So I think in the southern part of India, there was a certain fondness for going to the US. I think the United States was probably the first choice for everybody, equally for undergraduate programs as well. I think our dear friend Trump has not helped himself very well. So he has put away people. I don't know, God knows what he'll do today. He's put away people from the whole concept of sort of, migration and studying. But what we have seen is that trend has changed for a lot of undergraduate students, especially for subjects around medicine, civil engineering, water engineering, environmental sciences, subjects that, are hard to get into, change, and that's shifting towards the UK. So I think it's one of those changes in the consumer behavior as well. Plus, I think there's a lot of disposable income in South India, and education's given a lot of importance in this part of India, more than maybe some others. So I think there's a definite investment that people are willing to make, because it is more expensive.
Tony, anything to add? So I'm just going to really quickly open up the floor for a couple of questions, and then we'll come to a close. Any questions? Please don't be shy from anyone. Yep, there's one at the back.
So my question is for Tony. So how does ISF, vet the agencies? What kind of data they go into? What are the mediums of acquisition of this data? I have attended the ISF myself a couple of times. So there's this data on how many students they recruit for a certain year for masters, bachelors. So what is the credibility of this data, and how is it sourced? How are these agencies vetted? Yeah.
ISF doesn't look at performative agent data. So, for a lot of institutions, they're very interested in how many applications did you send me? How many offers did that rise to? What were the student outcomes of that? ISF is really only interested in ensuring that that is a good bona fide company. So we look at who the individuals are behind the company. Do they have a good website? No one's got a bad criminal record. I don't want to go back to the dating analogy, but we just want to make sure that they're a good agency to do business with. Whereas for an institution, they want to know more about the performative data of how many students you sent me. So whilst we send out the survey, and quite often agencies will tell us how many students they've sent to which market and whether they're more interested in language programs over engineering programs, and that will help us in the data, the matching that happens at the events. But when it comes to the accreditation, we're really interested in making sure that they've got references from people they work with, that they're a bona fide company that pays taxes, they've got a decent website, and that there's no compliance risk. So I think that they're two quite different things for me, the accreditation on one side, and then the other thing that we're involved in under ISF Academy is helping counsellors get certified, and that's a massive drive towards raising professional standards. We have around 140 plus thousand counsellors that have trained with us, and around 22,000 of those now hold professional certificates, and we've now started to move towards career professional development points to ensure that they are truly, if you like, equipped in order to counsel frontline students.
Thanks.
Question there?
Hello.
Sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go.
Thanks for the discussion, and it was an amazing moderation as well. I just want to ask you, whatever you say, I can concur with that. But in terms of the United Kingdom, how can we consider the opportunities for the skilled worker visa? So there are several aspects that is challenging at the present circumstances. So what do you think about that?
I don't think there's anyone better than me to answer this, because I am on a skilled worker visa in the UK as we speak.
Right.
It's a challenging time at the moment. I'm not going to mince my words. However,
yes,
if you do bring certain skills to an organization that hold credible value, I think there's still a great place, and there are lots of great places to work in the UK. The problem is that there's so much negative media attention around these things, but it's to weed out the unethical practice in the system or the abuse of a system. It's not to weed out the good people at all. So I think have faith, and if you are looking at that as an aim or a journey, there's still great places, great jobs available, but you need to define your specific skill set in whichever industry you work in.
Yeah, right now in India, that is a challenge. So there are hundreds of students or thousands of students who are not considering UK as their destination right now because of that. So I just wanted to pop out
you're
that
right.
question.
Yeah, we've heard that as well, but I think that's an ongoing process.
Right.
If you are taking up an undergraduate program or a postgraduate program at any UK university, you still do get to stay back for 18 months on a graduate visa to get some graduate work experience, and then the skill visa comes into play. Only a couple of weeks back, we heard from one of our Indian students who did their masters in AI at Brunel, then got a placement at PwC, and shortly after the placement got a skilled worker visa.
Amazing.
So it is still happening, like I said, but your subject, your skill set has to be very clear.
So the ecosystem in India should consider that in a constructive way.
100%. 100%.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. One last
Hello.
question. Thank you.
Hello.
Okay. Just
Hello.
yes.
So actually, in India, we have different kinds of medical systems. Sir. Actually, allopathy is there. Then Ayurvedic, Siddha, homeopathic systems are there. Could they do PG at in an allopathy system at England, ma'am? That's all.
Ayurvedic background.
Yes.
You can do a postgraduate program. Obviously, there's less of Ayurvedic program, related programs in the UK. But there's multiple medicinal, Chinese medicine is widely practiced in the UK, and you
Yeah,
have
that's. I'm not going to say that.
Yeah.
So, if suppose if you go for African countries, some paramedical staff, they could join MBBS degree there. They can complete MD. One BSc nursing candidate can do MD, whereas similar systems is available in London, sir. Because all graduates in medical science in India, except only one, the pharmacology system alone is different. Rest of the subjects are similar. 5.5 years course only here. Then is there any sync between there?
limited. I'm just looking at the colleagues in my room. We have a medical school. For us, it won't be an option because we don't have that transition. I'm looking at Vani from Nottingham. That won't be possible at Nottingham either. But there may be some new medical schools in.
Actually, the issue is all subjects are similar,
Yeah.
except pharmacology is different. There is two papers. The 5.5 years they are doing,
Yeah.
only two papers, maybe the period of duration is very short. But the theory, everyone studying all graduates. If you take in India, from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, northeast to Gujarat, you could find all are studying the same syllabus, nothing different. Pharmacology alone different.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Yes.
I think the one option they can look at, again, this is a very Brunel specific answer, if they've completed their either pharmacy or any of the medicine related programs in India, they can look at advanced clinical practice, but they have to have had minimum 2 years of work experience, even though if it's in India, that's fine.
Yeah, sure, madam. I'm not going to say that. Once they complete their degree, suppose there is an innovation program, why don't you give such an innovative degrees?
Yeah.
Sir, they should reconsider, So suppose in India, we could not give permission to do allopathy system of medicines, whereas if you go for London, they have chances, what kind of quality, they have all kind of education backgrounds. Only pharmacology, they are actually going to learn pharmacology only.
Yeah, no.
Think it differently.
No, definitely.
Thank
Feedback's
you.
noted and
Thank you.
feedback's back. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time, and Tony had to run to another session, but thank you again.
I request the panelists to please receive a token.
Sorry.
But you can all.
That session's in here. I've gone off spine where my session is.
Yes. A token. Another token of similar appreciation. That's okay. She will gift it to me. Please. And now this camera. Now here. Cheers.
No photo with Tony at all.
Go.
You're in here now, aren't you? Yeah. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
Balaji sir. Sir, Ratna. Hello, check, 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 check. Hello, hello. No, that's not. That's not my problem. You just tell them to the work media people. I'll tell you. Rajesh, you got more. No, the conference room, 2 more tables. நான் இருக்கேன் அந்த இடம் ஆமாம் சின்ன
She is telling event organizer herself, what asking us everything.
Huh?
She is telling that she is event all in charge.
I don't know.
What asking everything.
All in charge. நீங்க all in charge. Yeah, I think so. தடி எங்கடா இருக்காங்க ஸ்டோர் இன்சார்ஜ் யார் ஸ்டோர் இன்சார்ஜ் யாருமே இல்லை தலைவருங்க யாருமே இல்லைங்க on the way. Audience mic. This is audience.
After this, after she finishes.
Hi, Srikar.
Hi, nice to meet you. I'm Tony from myself. Nice to meet you.
Good to see you again.
So you based up in York?
Yes. Originally from Bangalore,
Right.
but been in the UK for a number of years.
I'm looking at Bangalore at the moment. We do an event once a year here. This year, next month.
Quickly introduce.
No, it's a few weeks' time.
Yes, I'll
We did
change.
Mumbai, then Delhi, then Goa. Now we're doing Sri Lanka. We're looking
Well, it is
so
a,
we're literally,
the market is
Bangalore and Hyderabad,
Sorry?
the two cities.
You can take the seat. I'll introduce you.
makes complete sense. Makes complete sense. It's Hyderabad should be on your list.
Yeah.
Definitely.
It's just for volume of students and volume of agents.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. It does.
The other halls packed. The other places. Other benches
Check, check.
already packed.
Check, 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 check. Hello. Yeah.
That's what I was telling you. It's been added.
Excuse me.
Shivani, you've been to about 5, 6 times.
Srikar, you're also joining as a panelist, huh? Check, check, check. Yes. Welcome everybody to the IGES for our next panel. This panel will be tackling the ethical dimensions of student mobility. How do we ensure that international education is not just excellent but also equitable and ethically sound? So we'll have some really important questions that will be answered. And for that we have a distinguished set of panelists. First up, Rohit Kumar, Director of International Recruitment, Partnerships and Mobility at the University of York. Thanks Rohit for being here. And then Tony Lee, who we've just heard, Chief Visionary Officer at ISEF. And then Dr. Farhad Khan, CEO of Miyasi Institute of Management. Mick Purcell, Head of School at RAGS Pallikudam of Excellence. And moderating this panel is Stephanie Walton, Head of International Recruitment at the University of East London. May I request you to welcome all the panelists onto the stage. Over to you, Stephanie.
Thank you. Hello? Yes, okay. Well, welcome everybody.
Oh, I'm very sorry. We also have Srikar. Sorry, I was reading out of my paper. But we also have Srikar, our founding partner as well, who graciously has joined us for this panel. So more questions.
Well, thank you for joining us on day 2 of the conference, late afternoon. So stay with us. We'll try and make this as interesting and valuable for your time as possible. So my name is Stephanie Walton. I'm the Director of Recruitment and Admissions at the University of East London. And we are an extremely enterprising university in the UK, and we recruit at scale and with quality a huge number of international students every year. And those students go on to start their education journey with us and stay with us, having a really good student experience, and come out the other end with successful graduation programs. And today we're here to talk about student mobility and the ethics that sit behind that. So I'm just going to get my co-panelists to introduce themselves and to give you a bit of background in terms of their work in the education sector. Yep, okay. Is that one working? Yes, it is. Okay, I won't shout. So I'm just going to get my panelists to introduce themselves and to give you all a little bit of context of the great work that they're doing within the education sector. So Dr. Khan, I'll come to you first, and then we'll pass the mic down.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. It's my pleasure to be here. My name is Farhad Khan, and I head a business school in Chennai called the Mayasi Institute of Management. Not many would have heard of this name because we do things very silently. Our focus is not to just enable degrees, but to ensure that the students are equipped with the necessary skills to be employable. So there is a whole lot of things that we do, and we believe that participative learning, experiential learning is something that will be the defining moment for management graduates in particular. And I think we are on a mission to do that. And we are an accredited B school and an ISO certified and an AICT approved institution. Thank you.
Hi, for anyone that's stayed in the room, there's somewhat joy in repetition. But Tony Lee from ISEF. ISEF for the last 30 years has been convening members of the sector. So that means the agents, language schools, universities that come together that enable student mobility. And in recent years, we've been involved in the sharing of data through something called ISEF Monitor. We have a thing called ISEF Academy, where we raise professional standards, particularly when it comes to student counselling and people understanding the different dynamics of destination markets. And then we've also built technology which enables institutions to train agents that are out there in the marketplace representing them. And we're moving more towards compliance technology as well. All of those things are aimed to ensure an industry that is driving towards greater numbers. We've seen a quadrupling of the number of students that are studying overseas, and we try to provide infrastructure that enables ethical student mobility.
Hello everyone, good afternoon. My name is Rohit Kumar. I'm the Director of the International Office at the University of York, and currently also leading on the work that's happening for our new campus in Mumbai, along with a wonderful team back at York and in India. So firstly, thank you to everyone here for having made it this far in the afternoon, and thanks also to the NISAO team for having me on the panel, and of course, Steph, thank you for leading this session. Just a couple of words in terms of what we're planning to do in India. So the University of York is a member of the Russell Group of universities in the UK. And the Russell Group is a group of 24 UK research-intensive universities. And we are delighted to be in India. We are hoping to open our campus doors in Mumbai by September 2026. So more of that, I'm sure, as the session unfolds.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mick Purcell, and I am the head of schools at Rex Pallikudam in Coimbatore. I come from the United States, but I first moved to India 26 years ago, and I have spent the last 26 years teaching in and working in and running international schools. So I am sort of on the supply side of the question, and I've been advising learners, families, parents about their choices and sending kids to universities all over the world for the past 26 years.
Yeah, hi friends, this is Shrikar Alapati. I'm the founder and managing director of a company called Global Tree. We are into the space of consulting for overseas education, immigration and training. Basically, we are a 19 years old company catering to 450 plus universities across 20 plus destinations. We are recognized by several country high commissions. And it's my pleasure to be here among with all the eminent personalities, Steph and everyone. And of course, on one of the very interesting topics, student mobility. So yeah, I think way back in 2009, I could instrumentally get an MOU signed between Swinburne University of Technology and JNTU Hyderabad. So basically that was on collaborative research, right? I think now so many different things are happening. We'll talk further. Thank you.
Thank you. Is this working? Can you? Hello?
You would prefer this?
It's just the awkward bit because these working? See if one of those ones work. Well, thank you. I think I'd like to start with Mick actually, because you're close to the students, right? So let's start with the student journey and the early intervention. You've mentioned that you're obviously working directly with student and families. I guess my question really, and I think it's one that the audience would like to know a little bit more about, is India's not just sending students abroad, it's shaping global education policy, as we've seen over the last 2 days, transnational provision of education and quality assurance. So my question, Mick, to you is, given that you're in the system here on the education side, is how should mobility systems reflect that shift?
Sure. Can you hear me? Yes? So one conversation that I have with Indian families over and over again is they come to me and say, how can I get into this university? How can my child get into this university? And I try to explain that actually you have the power in this conversation. You are the person who they are trying to get. You've got to kind of look at it from a different point of view. So one thing I think is really important is that we have a shift in an awareness of what is the economic dynamic here. And that Indians, through events like this, become more and more aware of all the options and the power they have in this conversation. That it's actually more universities trying to get them to come than it is they trying to get into particular universities. And this is really about just awareness and education. Indian consumers, Indian families need to be aware and educated about all the options that are available to them.
Thank you, Mick. So just a follow-up question on that, when you're dealing with families, and obviously you'll have lots of examples of success of students gaining entry into the institutions of their desire. I think my follow-up question really is, equity is often framed as access. Do you track as a school the outcomes of your students, and should we actually be measuring that as a starting point of success?
Yes, we absolutely do track the outcomes of our students, and we have them come back frequently, which is what we all like to do as schools. We have them come and speak to the younger students about their experiences and their opportunities. And, you know, I think access is one part of it, but again, just building awareness and letting young people see all the different kinds of options that are available to them is also a big part of the solution to these ethical questions, if I'm making sense. So, for example, we are now hearing, and I heard Tony comment on this in the previous panel, more and more and more kids, instead of just saying, I want to be a doctor or I want to be an engineer, have very specific career goals. Yeah. They want to get into machine learning or AI or something, and they're starting to ask questions about specific programs, specific pathways, specific countries. Not only university programs and career paths, but also experiences through their travels, their families. See, now we're in something like the second or third generation of Indians that have gone abroad. So many of them have families that have already traveled abroad, and they have experiences, cousins, aunties and uncles who live abroad and are coming back and sharing these stories. So the more education, the more awareness there is about this, the better equity and access there will be.
Yeah, thank you, Mick. I'm going to come to Tony next, if you don't mind, if you could share the mic. So Tony, my question really is, you see global mobility systems across multiple markets and countries. What structural changes are you seeing that most institutions, particularly in the UK, are underestimating at the moment regarding student mobility?
I think really it's around transparency, and I think it speaks to your point. I think students and their parents, they want to know more. They want to know, okay, of the students that came here last, who got what jobs? Where did they get those jobs? Where did you get them on placements for? Did they have a really good time there? And I think also we've seen in a relatively short period of time the advent of social media. People share TikToks. Most students, when they come now, they know whether they can get their favourite food, what's going to be happening, what's going to be on at the local cinema. The freedom of information that's happening amongst young people is leading to greater transparency. And the difference between different markets, if you look at somewhere like Australia, they're already publishing all of the agents they work with on their websites. You can see that directly. We're not quite doing that yet in the UK. And in America, they're still asking, what is an agent? And so you're seeing difference in different markets. And Canada, again, has seen a quite different approach to agents because they've traditionally been running a migration market where they're looking for people to stay. And so, yeah, the short answer to your question is much greater levels of transparency of information and data.
Thank you. I'm going to come to Zvika now, if you wouldn't mind. Let's bring in our agent partner. So we know that advice and guidance is critical. We've just heard from Mick to learn that students are very much more research now. But how do we ensure that students and families are given the information to make the decision that's best for the student? And because it's a model that's driven on incentive, so institutions in the UK, we're public institutions, but we are reliant on our partners, like Svika, who does a fantastic job here in India of reaching students that we would never be able to contact, to ensure that our brand is positioned correctly, that our proposition around our university is understood by students and families, but moreover that the student is given the actual choice to make the decision that's best for them. So my question is, how do you see the responsibility of the recruitment journey, particularly from India to the UK, Svika, and the longer term outcomes for student success? What's going to change in the next couple of cycles, do you think?
So I think it's very truly you have mentioned, if you look at the number of students that are being recruited to not just UK universities, across the globe, so I think more than 80 to 85% of the students are recruited through agents or consultants or education consultants, right? So the role of an agent is very critical. Yeah, and that too with the number of agents that are on the rise in India and abroad. And I think especially in India, the number of agents are very much on the rise. So I think certain important aspects, right? I think is the transparency. As Tony was mentioning, the transparency of information. So I see there's a lot of difference which varies from consultant to consultant from various companies, especially on the critical parts, right? So those are the kind of course they're looking at, the subjects, the specializations, the career outcomes, right? Student is getting offer letters, I think from 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 universities, from at least 2 or 3 or more than, more than such kind of consultants. But so what I've been seeing when I'm interacting with several students is there's a lot of gap in understanding. So student basically doesn't know what are the kind of specializations, what are the career outcomes. Yeah, so I think students very randomly choose kind of computer science or now the so-called AI. So right, when we interact with the students, okay, what do you want to do? What do you want to pursue? Immediately what comes from the student's mouth or parents is artificial intelligence. So, but does the student know what is this AI? Does the computing background is needed, or what are the career outcomes? So I think there's a lot of gap in this aspect, which is very, very critical. And if this kind of information is provided to the student, which includes everything, I think the duration, the tuition fee, scholarship, the mode of payment, and etc. I think if this information comes to the student in a right way, so student can plan and design his career, implement his career in a right way. What happens if it happens in some other way?
Sure.
So,
and I know that the agents, education agents, work extremely hard on the whole to make sure that the route to enrolment is as clear and barrier-free as possible. But my challenge to you, Svitkar, is you are all operating as private entities, commercial entities. So you're shaping the demand and the service and the conversion ratios for the student journey. So my challenge is, should you also now be sharing accountability for the outcome at the end of the journey? So we know there's a transaction that happens at the start, and obviously your job is to make sure that students are counselled correctly and they can make the right decision to come to a specific institution. But we know that UKVI and the Home Office now have expectations of UK institutions to make sure students start, stay and are successful. So the challenge back to, I guess, the education agents is exactly that. Should you be sharing the accountability of that outcome and graduate outcomes with the institutions that you're working with?
Yeah. So I think one of the very important aspect is the career outcome, as you rightly mentioned, and especially when a student gets a visa, they'll be more than happy. And I would tell the student that, okay, you got the visa, so this is just your first step of your great journey. And that's how I think we at Global Tree, so we have various tracking mechanisms where we help students in terms of internship, short-term internship and a long-term internship, and especially the career outcomes. And we also have multiple kinds of audits that keeps happening. So based on the students' academic English language proficiency and the career goal, right? What are the kind of universities they're suggested? What are the kind of programs they're suggested? That's how we look at various things. But as you rightly mentioned, so that kind of a transparency and the right information being passing on to the students, and also with the final career outcome. I think that's the key to success.
Thank you, Shivka. If I could come to Dr. Khan now, actually, just for some commentary. I wonder if you could share the mic with him. So Dr. Khan, obviously, university systems and recruitment and mobility is heavily reliant on the private sector here. So I just wondered what your view was as these commercial entities are sitting at the heart of the system. Should they be treated as service providers, partners, or actually system stewards here in India? What's your view?
I have come across many students approach me for guidance. And to be very frank, I have not come across many agents who are giving them the clear roadmap or the clear pathways. Okay. That's where the hitch is. Okay. So as Mr. Shikhar pointed out very rightly, the role of an agent is more than that of a mentor here. Okay. Okay. Though of course there is a commercial angle to that, but guiding them to the right university, ensuring that they get the right scholarships, ensuring that the paperwork is all done. Because if you look at the scholarships that are all being doled out, numbers look very fancy, but actually it is 2 to 3% which is actually reaching out to the applicants. So that's very, very important. So very, very important, because if you look at the mobility that we're talking about, for every Indian from this continent, from India, there are very less number of students who are coming in. But if you look at a B.Tech program, there is a lot of traction for B.Tech programs. So, and as I was there in the previous panel, yes, students are looking for, as Shikha was telling, that they are looking for PG programs in AI, which India is currently not in a position to offer, or is in the process of offering. So, to cut the long story short, the role of an agent is very, very important, provided he is ethical, he is transparent, and he is informed. You know, that's very, very important.
I do agree, but I also know from the role that I do at the university that a university has an obligation with the relationship they have with our agent partners, and the obligation is to make sure that the agency is well trained, that there is support and guidance for their agency. And we have a model at University of East London where we have a very small number, there's 5 currently, of strategic partners who are based in market, who work at a strategic level with the university, because obviously we're trying to plan our programs, we're going through curriculum transformation, we are trying to serve industry of the future. But actually, it's the agencies who have the insight and the feedback from families and students as to what we need to be doing to deliver an education that fits and has demand.
Absolutely, you're on the dot. It's not regulated. If I were to put it in one thing, it is not regulated. The student has to find ways and means to find a right agent. And I've not come across any university having a setup, at least the private universities, having a setup which is more progressive and more productive in guiding the students. In majority of the cases, there is not a facility to facilitate this thing. So it's all loose ends everywhere. But of course, there are agents who are well known, but who can count them on your fingertips, who play a role. But the amount of, the number of students who are going abroad, phenomenal. You know, I am told from the Niti Aayog report that, you know, it's at 8 or 10% growth rate every year. And the number is only increasing. And the big 4 countries are the ones which are taking. We have, I know about big 4 companies, but big 4 nations are the ones who are taking most of our students. That's the US, UK, Australia and Canada. Okay, so 29% of the Indian students are going to US, not US. The US total, if you look at the total students who are studying, 29% are from India. It's very, very important that universities also come forward. I'm not sure if a private university and a progressive university have this kind of a setup, but they also feel that there is an internal competition. Why would they lose out to a foreign university when they can provide? I'm talking about the likes of Ashoka University or a Kriya University, you know.
Thank you, Dr. Khan. I'm going to come to Rohit now. So myself and Rohit do a very similar job, but for very different institutions. So I wonder if you would frame first, Rohit, University of York, and the type of recruitment journey that you admit your students on. And I have a question specifically around Russell Group, but it'd be really helpful for students and the audience to understand the model at University of York.
Thank you very much. And it was very fascinating to hear my fellow panelists speak about such an important topic about, you know, equity and trust and all of those things. So just to answer your first question, when we talk about recruiting into a university, whether it's in the UK or the US or Canada, you have different rules and policies that have to be complied with. That's obvious. Now, if you look at the UK model, predominantly for the longest period of time, the model has been that universities in the UK would come to India, we meet students, we've increasingly worked with agency partners. And on the undergraduate side, we have the UCAS system through which you apply. Now, how has the market changed? Over the last decade or so, you will find that there's been two fundamental points, I think, in terms of, if one wants to call them, inflection points. First one is that the agency model itself has undergone a rapid shift. You have so many players now in the country, and those players have further partners that they work with. So you have a model where you have so many different touch points for a student. So in an already large and fragmented and complicated market, you've got this additional challenge of how do you differentiate between the information that's out there and what you want as a student. So the earlier point about trust becomes very, very important. The second thing is the amount of data that you have today at your tips, in terms of fingertips, disposal of information that's there. You don't need to go to an office anymore. Everything is there on your phone. You can talk to someone that's in the office, or you have a chatbot that's giving you the answers. So once again, where previously you would have had 5 or 6 institutions to look up and get information from, you now have 100. So the confusion is both sides now. You also have yourself as a student or an applicant trying to make the best choice of where you should and want to go to study. And then, of course, you have the other question of, do you want to go abroad for a full program, or do you want to consider something else that perhaps is slightly different? So therein, we have the other problem of how do you decide which model and what are some of the challenges, opportunities of that particular model. So just bringing it right back to the start of the question, in terms of how Russell Group universities like mine and how UK universities like ours, how do we recruit students from India? The first thing that I think we should put out there categorically is that there is no other market like India. And I deliberately say the word market. I know we have colleagues of ours who don't necessarily like the term market or don't like us using it, but I say market for a very clear reason, because you won't find any other student sending region which behaves like a true consumer-led market. Because in India, the questions that you get from students, from parents, force you to think and behave like you are talking and treating someone as a consumer. And so therefore the onus on the institution being very clear about what it's offering to its students is, I would probably say, at a much higher level. Not saying that we are any less diligent in any other market. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying here is that the scrutiny we get as universities is probably the highest when compared to any other market. So that means we are interacting with people who are extremely sharp. We're interacting with the market that is highly developed in terms of what it wants from us. So we have to be at the top of our game, but it also means that it's an increasingly competitive market. So UK universities have some set models. We obviously love talking to our students. There are certain trends that we look for, so statements of purpose, your 12th standard marks, of course, English language proficiency, all those things do matter. But what we've seen over the last couple of years is that with the advent of ChatGPT and AI, it's becoming increasingly harder to separate what's fact versus fiction. So that's why events like this, events like the education fairs that we attend, are doubly important, because it gives us a chance to meet and talk with people. And those touch points, I think, are extremely crucial, and they probably will be even more important going forward.
Thanks, Rohit. So I alluded to earlier that I work for University of East London, Rohit works for University of York. We are very different types of institutions, and I would say quite confidently that UEL is looking for really hardworking, ambitious students, where we've set the tariffs at average attainment. We want to make access available to students who have a desire to increase their outcomes and change their outcomes. But University of York is a highly selective university, and it's held in really high regard in the UK for home and international, Rohit. So I guess my question is today, just to challenge that a bit, is how do you ensure that excellence does not become a proxy for exclusion when students have a desire to change their outcomes, and particularly in India, for non-traditional backgrounds, how do you find the balance through the admissions process to not exclude students?
It's a really good question, and it's one that I think has many layers to it. I've got a couple of thoughts on that. So let me, in no particular order, I'm just going to share them. I think it's safe to say that excellence becomes a proxy for exclusion when we mistake privileged signals for potential. So what I mean is that raw attainment is heavily shaped by context. So around half of A-level results, for example, in terms of the ones who applied to UK universities last year, were at the grade A or above, right? And that's compared to a much lower percentage in academies or in further education colleges. Now, if you take the Indian context, what do I mean by that? So you'll find that you have certain schools that are in top-tier cities or in very eminent brands. You will see a trend that those students end up getting a much higher percentage. Not always, I'm not painting a broad picture, I'm just, it's a couple of statistics there. And then one could argue that if you looked at the top brands, A-level IB schools, you'll see a higher percentage there. If you went to a tier 2 school, and if you went to a CBSE school, for example, in a really small part of India, you have some fantastic students, but as a percentage, the results of those schools are not always on par. And so that difference absolutely manifests itself. So taking it in that context, I think it's extremely important that how do we measure excellence? How do we articulate what we want? And so that point about it becoming a proxy, I think, is important. So in one way, I would suggest that the solution lies in looking at excellence having various off-ramps, So what do I mean by that? We should keep the academic bar where it is. So our academic requirements are not lowered for anyone, that they have to be what they are. However, we should change how we identify that talent and how we support it. So effectively what we're saying is that it doesn't mean that you have to only go to that top tier school and only then can you come to our university. Not at all. Our grades are the same, but how we judge your performance and how you come to us, there are various off-ramps for it. So I think that's extremely important. I think the other thing also is making sure that our selection processes are not so rigid that it excludes students who may have other ways of coming in. So there are various ways of getting around that question. And finally, I think we need information parity. I think it's very, very important that the information that we share, the information that we make use of, it's important that there's parity among those parameters. So I think those 3 points is probably how I'd structure that. I'm not sure I've fully answered your question, but those are the things that come to mind immediately.
Yeah, and I guess it's challenging when academic rigor cannot be changed. So there is a certain student profile, but I think it's right. It's about reach. It's about maybe the strategic partnerships with our agent partners that are here in country that can go and find and identify the students from perhaps tier 2, even tier 3 that have the ability and are capable, but may not have the information readily available to be able to access your programs. I'm just going to come to Tony for the second last question. And Tony, I'm just kind of looking for an overview of the sector really from your point of view. So the sector often talks about ethics, but as we know, incentives are driving behaviour often, particularly in the historic market of recruiting in India. Where do you see the biggest misalignment between values and commercial reality?
I think it's come out in the conversation that we've been having here. You mentioned that 80% of students are being guided by an agency and a counsellor, and they're being guided into institutions that could be selecting or could be recruiting. And we know that there's a lack of transparency into how those incentives work. And I think where ethics come into it, some institutions, if they're looking purely for volume, they may be incentivizing agents in a way that would not induce ethics. They may be saying, if you send me 10% more students next year, I'll give you more money, or for the 10th student, I'll give you double the commission. And those kind of incentives, I don't think drive the right behavior in the market that we want to see. I'm not sure that the sort of radical approach of being completely transparent, because there's commercial sensitivities around that. But I think that collectively, between agents and selecting universities and recruiting universities, I think there's a lot that we can do, I think, to be more open and honest about exactly what's happening in that marketplace. Because what it really comes down to is, for an institution, they want the best fit student. And that's what's good for the student, and it's what's good for the agent. And that comes down to an articulation of what your unique selling points are, and an understanding from the agent of what a best fit student really is. What does that really look like? And I think the blurring of that line sometimes comes down to lack of training, sometimes it comes down to misaligned incentives. And I think it's great to have events like today where you get different stakeholders together to start to discuss it, because I think we all agree that it can be improved.
Yeah. And I'm a huge advocate of partnerships. So I think there's a connotation when we use the word agent that really doesn't fit the service provision that's often going on in the partnerships that we have, certainly at UEL. And we did a huge reevaluation of our ecosystem of agent partners and really brought down that list, because I believe not everybody should have access to a university contract to be able to be a supplier, because I think that there is obligations that come with a student's journey. They're real human beings. These are families that are investing huge amounts of their savings often, and self-funding their students to go abroad. So there is an obligation, I think, between the university, like I said earlier, in making sure that our partners are briefed correctly, that there's monitoring control over what's going on in their agencies, that outcomes and conversions are looked at and discussed with the partner, so that the student journey is as easy as possible. There's low barrier to them receiving their visa if they meet the criteria of the university that they've chosen as a destination. So I think partnership and being visible is really important, and I do recognise that agencies have reach that universities don't, because they know the local dynamics of the market, they know the families, they're often supporting. Somebody mentioned earlier that we're on probably third generation now, at least, of Indian families sending their students abroad. So there is a need to, I guess, sharpen up the commercial relationship that universities have with agent partners to make sure outcomes are achieved, like, collectively.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think there's a very fine line between the capacity to be able to support and train your true partners in market, and to seeing them as a compliance risk and reducing reach. Because I think the other risk to that is that you say, actually, we're just going to work with less partners because it's easier for us, because there's less compliance risk, and ultimately that then feeds into the idea of the sub-agent model, because this came up on a panel yesterday. If a student walks in and the best fit for them is your institution, and that agent doesn't have a direct contract, then should they send the student to a less good fit institution, or should they send them through the sub-agent network? And that becomes a dilemma in itself as well. So I suppose we also want to make sure that, as much as we can, we support as great a reach into the agent marketplace as we can.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. So I'm going to bring the panel discussion to a close. I'm just going to throw this open to the panel, so please feel free for one or all of you to comment. If we reconvened in 5 years, and 5 years is a long time in education, but if we were to do that, what would you need to have seen change, and for us to kind of have confidence in that global student mobility has become more ethical, has become more with more equity, and genuinely has excellence for students during the process? Maybe one thing from each of you that would be an improvement on where we are today, because we can't stand still, nothing does. So just interested to hear your final thoughts on that.
I'm going to pass this along, it's just because I've
Sure.
got the mic. But I think we could look at the financial industry for a guide there, because if you go to buy a pension scheme, or if you go to buy an investment in the UK, it's regulated and it's transparent, and I think that's the direction that we're heading in as an industry.
Thank you. Just a couple of quick ones, I think, from my end. I would say that in the next 5 years, if we were to say that mobility had become more ethical, there needs to be a couple of shifts. And the first shift, I think, should be that recruitment and the trust in recruitment, I think, needs to be really re-engineered. It needs to be changed. And what do I mean by that? It's important that it's traceable. It's important that it's auditable. It's important that there is trust in the process and there's trust in the participants of that process. Now, I know it's very easy to throw that statement around. It's a massive, massive exercise in a country as large and as fragmented as India. So I think that is crucial. The second thing I would say is that equity should be evidenced or would be evidenced through supported outcomes, not just results, and not just access either. And what do I mean by that? It means we should be able to publish progression outcomes, progression rates, completion rates, graduate opportunities, all of that in a very efficient, transparent manner. And that should be paired with transparency also about the affordability of things. Sometimes we are quite hesitant when talking about the financial side of things. And there are lots of obvious reasons for it, of course, but at the same time, it's, I think, also important to be very upfront about the fact that it's just not the sticker price that you pay or choose to pay. There are other things that come with the price tag, but those little things that come with the price tag could be the ones that add a lot of incremental value to your career and your eventual outcome and wherever you end up going. So I think it's important that we start looking at things from that angle as well. And finally, I think it's important, and this point I think resonates very much on a personal level for me. It's something that I feel we should be pushing for regardless, but I hope in 5 years' time. And that point is that excellence should have portable value. It can't and should not just be limited to the grades that you get. It should be a combination of factors. You know, so it should we should take into account your credits, your qualifications, any certifications that you've made use of or had. So I think it's important that we just don't look at things in that non-linear, in that linear manner, and we go about looking at things in a non-linear manner.
Yeah, thank you, Rohit.
I think we need to see more consumer power and consumer awareness. As Rohit was saying earlier, the Indian families, the parents, and the learners themselves who are driving this market by spending millions of pounds on universities, they are highly educated, and we need to hear more questions like that, and we need to see this more worldwide. And I also think that the schools and the education system must do a better job of actually teaching children about their options, about financial literacy, about economics, about how much it costs their parents to send them to university. We're seeing more and more in that now, and as the previous panelists, including Tony, were mentioning, we're now hearing from the clients themselves, from the students themselves. Tell me about the ROI and how much will I get in a return of investment, and what kind of jobs and outcomes will I get? So I think schools need to do a better job of going beyond just preparing kids for board exams and having them educated about what choices they have.
Thank you, Mick.
I think in the next 5 years, especially talking from the Indian perspective, so I think there could be a lot of change that could happen, and I think it's a bit difficult to predict. So one such thing is, I think as of now, getting a loan, education loan, either from a private or a public sector bank, I think to a tune of 1 or 1.5 CR, students do not need collateral security, at least to the top 500 or top 700 ranked universities. And with the kind of economy that India is pacing up, so I think in the next 5 years, so there could be a lot of flexibility in terms of the funding needed for the the studying abroad, and I think numbers could drastically increase to a significant extent. Along with that, there are a lot of foreign universities being set up in India. So from UK, from Australia, from multiple other countries, and in the next 5 years to come, there could be a lot of foreign universities already being set up in India. So I think things could totally change. But I think in the overseas education space, I feel strongly that the numbers can increase to a very significant extent. And I think the Big Four is no more a concept, right? Especially after US has changed the entire dynamics. So now I think it is no more Big Four, it is Big Eight or Big 10. So diversify, your portfolio. I think from the overseas education point of view, from the university's point of view, or from agents' point of view. So don't restrict to just few countries, and rather, so I think there are a lot of other emerging destinations that are coming up, like Dubai, like Singapore, Luxembourg, Spain, Latvia, Lithuania, right? So I think the whole set of dynamics that could literally change. And also with the virtual universities that is coming up, we have platforms like Coursera, right, which delivers almost all the programs, including Chicago Booth, Yale, Harvard, and everything. So I think whole set of dynamics might change in the next 5 years to come.
Right, well, no boredom for us then that's working in the sector. We're definitely going to be kept busy. So final view from Dr. Khan.
A very important point to ponder, because 34 billion USD is what is the outgo from India towards overseas education. That's almost 10 times the higher education budget. So I think in the 5 years to come, there would be a mechanism to find out what was the value that was generated and how has it come back to India. So I think there will be something that will come in as a mechanism to clearly define the pathways and ensure that there is an audit which is going to be in place. But having said that, we really don't know. As Shikhar was rightly pointing out, the Big Four thing is not going to be there. There are many countries who are going to open up this space for the Indian market. But ultimately what will decide is how is it being audited and how is it being transparent and how is it adding value.
And I think we all need to be very cognizant of the fact that historically India has been a one-way traffic out into the international space, and for a different panel at a different time, it's that traffic coming back into India is something also that we need to be very aware that needs to happen and needs to be driven. And I know University of East London, we brought out a delegation of students to work on some sort of research project in India last year, and our home students accompanied the Indian students back out to country to take part in that research which was employer-led. So it's that two-way transaction that also needs promotion, which will probably be through the kind of growth of branch campuses, with brands coming into India to support some of the topics that we've talked about over the last 2 days here. So I'm going to bring the panel to a close and ask the audience if they have any questions that they would like to ask our panel. We're open to that. Or maybe we answered all the questions and it was a good, robust panel. So, well, thank you for joining us this afternoon. I wonder if you would just give a round of applause to our panelists and thank them for their time this afternoon. We hope that was interesting and useful, and there were some key takeaways from us to you. So enjoy the last bit of the conference. I think we're into our last hour or so now. So appreciate your time and thank you very much.
As a token of love and respect, here are some Tanjavur paintings from TIDCO. Thank you very much.
நாலு மைக்
Thank you.